In the remote jungles of Belize, Madagascar, and Peru, there are creatures you definitely don't want to meet. From the aggressive human-snatching Sisimoto to the eerie shape-shifting Chulichaki, these half-human hybrids are every bit as dangerous as they sound. These are disturbing half-human hybrids seen in remote jungles. The Sisimoto is a monster you don't want to run into. It's said to be this massive, hairy humanoid that roams the jungles of Belize and Honduras, and it's not the kind of creature that just hides in the shadows. Story goes that this thing is pretty aggressive. It doesn't just attack people, it actively hunts them. The Sisimoto is said to have an almost human-like face, but it's buried under thick matted fur. Its eyes are deep set and mean looking, and its body is almost pure muscle. Unlike Bigfoot, which people say is mostly shy, the Sisimoto has no problem going straight into villages to snatch up women. Yeah, that's its thing. It just kidnaps women and drags them into the mountains, and once they're gone, they are gone. One of the most disturbing stories tells of a woman who managed to actually escape. So I guess in this case, she wasn't gone. She ran for her life. She swam across a river knowing the Sisimoto wouldn't follow. Apparently these things cannot handle water. Enraged, the creature didn't just give up and leave. It drowned its own hybrid offspring in a fit of rage before disappearing back into the jungle. Some say if you hear heavy footsteps in the trees at night, that's your only warning, because once you see it, it's too late. Deep in the rainforests of Madagascar, people talk about the Kalanaro, small, fast, vicious humanoid creatures. They stand just under 3 feet tall and are covered in dark, wiry hair and have long claws and glowing eyes. Some say they look like primitive humans, maybe even a lost branch of evolution, little hobbit people. These things are also said to be active hunters. They sneak into villages at night, stealing money and food, and according to some legends, they snatch up youngsters too. People say if you hear eerie whistling in the jungle, it's them calling to each other, planning their next move. They're also said to leave behind twisted gifts like animal bones and strange carvings or tufts of their own hair, almost like a warning. And then there's the water story. Fishermen tell of seeing them near rivers, watching them from trees, but when people get too close, the Kalanaro don't run, they dive straight into the water and vanish, like they've got gills or some kind of unnatural way of staying submerged. If you ever find yourself deep in the Amazon and spot a familiar face, maybe a friend, a relative, or even yourself, you just turn around and run, because there's a good chance you just saw the Chulichaki, and that never ends well. Also, if you ever just see your own face somewhere that's other than a mirror, probably not a good thing no matter what the case, but the Chulichaki is a shape-shifting entity from Peruvian folklore, a jungle trickster that lures people off the path, never to be seen again. It can look like anyone, but if you're sharp, you might catch the one thing it can't hide: its feet. One is normal, human-like, but the other is a more twisted, deformed type thing, usually said to be cloven, like a goat's. If you notice the feet too late, you're in trouble. People who follow the Chulichaki into the jungle never come back. Some say it devours them, others claim it curses them, leaving them wandering the rainforest forever, lost in some kind of trance. The creepiest stories come from hunters and travelers who swear they saw themselves standing in the trees, watching. Not a reflection, not a shadow, an exact double. And if you try to fight it, that's a bad idea too. The Chulichaki is small, but unnaturally strong, and if it touches you, you're as good as gone. The only way to escape is to never follow it in the first place, because once you step off the path, you're already his, or its. Deep in the jungles of Java, something massive flies through the night. It's not a bird, it's not a bat, it's something else. This thing is an absolute nightmare with wings, a gigantic bat-like creature with a 12-foot wingspan, glowing red eyes, and a face that some describe looking oddly human-like. Technically more gorilla or monkey-like, but close enough. The creature is named after the sound it makes, Ahul, an eerie, echoing cry that cuts through the jungle at night. Locals say if you hear it close, it's already watching you. Some say the Ahul is just a giant bat, maybe an undiscovered species, but bats just don't get that big. Largest bat wingspan on record is 5 feet, officially. And bats don't have monkey faces either, fortunately. And again, this thing stalks and hunts, There are stories of fishermen on the river vanishing without a trace, their boats found drifting with deep claw marks gouged into the wood. The unlucky ones who've seen it up close say its eyes glow in the dark, locking onto you before it vanishes back into the trees. Is it a lost species? Is it just a demon? Well, whatever it is, if you ever hear that Ahul in the distance, just get inside and stay there. The Jangu are these weird mystical water spirits that come from the folklore of Cameroon. They're kind of like mermaids. They're described as having long flowing hair. They're beautiful, not the evil kind of water spirits that lure men into the water and kill them though. In fact, they're seen as protectors, sort of like guardians of the water, bringing blessings to the people who respect them. They're said to live in the depths of rivers or the ocean, and locals believe if you treat the water with respect, the Jangu might just help you out. Some stories say they can heal the sick, bring good luck, but if you disrespect the water, if you get on their bad side, then you're in trouble. The Jangu have a reputation for dragging people under, not to kill them, but to take them into their underwater world where time doesn't seem to work the same way. At number 5, we have human brain cells in monkeys. So Chinese scientists made headlines recently by successfully adding human brain cells to monkeys. This breakthrough involved injecting human stem cells to monkey embryos, leading to the creation of these kind of chimeric embryos, organisms composed of cells from these two different species. The goal here was to gain insight into brain development and disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases by studying how the human cells integrated and interacted with the monkey brains. By looking at how the injected human cells behaved and developed in the monkey brains, they hope to gain more insight into brain functions and diseases that could be otherwise unattainable through traditional means. But it doesn't take a genius to realize that the creation of animals, especially monkeys with human brain cells, is a pretty unnerving idea. If you've ever seen Planet of the Apes, you know how things could turn out here. Next up, we have reptilians. The presence of reptilian humanoids seeping their way into our society has been a relatively well-known conspiracy theory for years. There are some folks that are just 100% convinced that a number of celebrities and politicians and other powerful members of our society are reptilian creatures in disguise. Folks report their eyes changing briefly, showing their true lizard-like pupils below the surface of their nearly flawless human skin suits, or their smooth skin starting to morph into the scaly-like texture that reptiles are so renowned for. And where are these creatures said to come from? Some say outer space, and some say there are cabals of reptilians living in layers deep beneath the surface of the earth, organizing themselves to enact world domination on the inferior species above, which is us. And at number 3, we have cows with human milk. Back in 2011, Chinese scientists were able to genetically produce a herd of 300 cows able to produce milk that was 80% similar to that of human breast milk. It contained nutrients not found in cow milk that are essential to human beings, and they were hoping to mass produce this hybrid cow human milk, getting it on the shelves of every grocery store. Suffice to say, it never really took off. Now, I don't know how this was accomplished. I am not a scientist, surprisingly, but I do know that this is something I would never drink. This isn't the only case of cows being modified with human genes to make their milk more closer to ours. This same process was also used on goats in Argentina, and this type of milk has been tested on pigs, and apparently they were fine, but I don't know about you. I just get a little pukey at the idea of chugging down milk, even just normal milk, by the way, but genetically modified milk from a lab cow, I'll pass on that one, thank you. And like I said, I'd pass on standard milk too. I just don't think we're supposed to really be consuming the stuff in high quantities like past infancy. But I don't know, there's a lot of debates about that. Number 2, the Lovelin Frog. Oh boy, do I love the Lovelin Frog. Yes, we're back into cryptid territory here. I can't help it. This weird and wacky creature is one of the most famous cryptids in the fine state of Ohio. This is not just one cryptid though. It's a group of 3 to 4 foot tall humanoid frog creatures. Now, the legend started gaining steam back in 1955 when a local man claimed to have seen not 1, not 2, but 3 of these froggish beings just hanging out under a bridge. He described them as being hairless, with large mouths with no lips, and with a greenish tint to their skin. They also had a wand-like device that emitted a strange smell of almonds. In 1972, a police officer also claimed to have seen a large frog creature, saying he actually shot at one of them as it leapt across the road. So did someone slip something into that man's drink in 1955? Was he just making it up? Did the cop in 1972 just fire at a very large lizard? Very possible. Or scientists were doing some nefarious frog experiments over there in Ohio. And knowing what I've learned about Ohio over my time spent doing this job, that would not surprise me in the slightest. Coming in at number 1 though, we have pigs with human organs. So this is something that's being continually researched. And it's actually pretty interesting and potentially very useful because the purpose of this is to create farm animals that can be harvested for important organs like human hearts and lungs, which could be life-saving for people needing replacements. Not sure if I'd want my new heart coming from a mutated pig monster, but I guess the chips are down. You gotta take what you can get. Japanese scientist Hiromatsu Nakuichi is one of the leading scientists on this project and is operating in the United States to help bring it to reality. They've been able to create hundreds of pig-human embryos, but none of them with the amount of human DNA necessary to accomplish their goals. But their research continues, and I'm confident that one day we'll be able to visit a disgusting pig person farm with fresh new organs we can choose from in order to keep ourselves alive for as long as we want. That's the future that I want. And we're starting off this list with rabbit-human hybrids. Back in 2003, scientists in Shanghai successfully fused human cells with rabbit eggs in a laboratory dish. And the crazy thing was, they survived until they were disposed of and harvested for their stem cells. So it's unclear how long they could have survived and whether the thing would have actually reached past the embryo stage. We could have had a real half-person, half-rabbit monster living amongst us. They'd be about 20 years old now. Not sure why the scientists didn't try this again and actually let the thing live. Maybe it just would have been too freaky. Or maybe they did try it again and there are a whole bunch of rabbit people hiding away somewhere in China just waiting to be unleashed into the world to do God knows what. Imagine how freaky a rabbit person would be though. A mangy, almost hairless rabbit with a human-y kind of face hopping around. Human-y, that's a new word. At our number 9 spot we have the chimpanzee. We're gonna chill in China for a little bit longer here. This apparently happened back in 1967. This story is not 100% verified, but according to 2 scientists in Shenyang, they were able to impregnate a chimpanzee with the seed of a human, which I very much hope done artificially. They were hoping to create a more advanced form of chimpanzee that could hopefully learn to speak, and were even hoping to send it off and do experiments in space. I think the more advanced form of chimpanzee is us. I think that's what we are. But anyway, apparently the chimp did get pregnant, now carrying a human-chimp hybrid in its belly, but the creature was never born as their lab and work was destroyed by revolutionaries and the chimp died while 3 months into its pregnancy. Not sure about this story. On one hand, this all sounds pretty far-fetched, but on the other, as I said, we do share about 98.8% of our DNA with chimps, so stranger things have happened. Number 8, mice with human livers. So this is an interesting case because I'm actually kind of on board with it. It's a great alternative to testing on chimpanzees. I shall explain. In 2010, researchers at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California were able to genetically modify a mouse so that it had an almost human liver. The aim of the game here was to create an animal they could test on for diseases that only humans and chimpanzees get. In the past, we've only been able to test stuff like hepatitis B and C and malaria on chimps, so being able to use mice instead, still not ideal, but it might be the best alternative. Basically, the goal is to infect these genetically modified mice with whatever disease they're testing on, and then attempt to treat them. Could make for pretty big strides in the medical field. At number 7, let's take a step away from actual science for a moment and discuss something a little bit more mysterious. The cryptid known as Owlman. I was considering putting the moth Mothman at this spot, but we've all heard about the Mothman plenty of times before. The first reported account of this terrifying creature dates back to 1976 in the village of Maunan in Cornwall. Two young girls had encountered the beast, describing what they saw to be an almost man-sized owl with glowing red eyes. It had been seen hovering above the church tower. Since that fateful day, more and more reports began swooping in about this mysterious owl creature, and till this day we still don't know what this thing is or was. Was it just a hoax, or possibly a really big owl? Probably, but it could have been a human-owl hybrid, which was the result of some horrendous scientific experimentation. You know, that's also a probability. So now we're going to talk about another mouse-related hybrid. This time it's mice with human brains. Yeah, it turns out we actually got pretty close to making Pinky in the Brain a reality, because I think sometimes scientists just go, why not? Let's just do it. Back in 2014, scientists were able to imbue several lab mice with millions of human brain cells. The mice lived though. After about a year, almost every cell in their brains had been replaced by human ones. Now, my human brain automatically goes to these mice now performing complex math equations and playing checkers with the scientists, but that's not what happened. Turns out their memory just got way better. The way scientists tested this was by playing a certain noise, then they'd send a small electric shock through the mice, and the next time they played whatever that noise was, they took note of how the mice reacted, bracing for the incoming electric shock, and they were able to determine that the memory of these mice was 4 times stronger than that of a normal mouse.
In our number 5 spot today, we have mermaids. Mermaids are one of the most famous creatures in our modern mythology that came all the way from ancient Assyria. These creatures with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish, all from the goddess Atargatis, who transformed herself into a mermaid after she was ashamed of herself for accidentally killing her partner. A tragic story that spurred the tales of mermaids for centuries to come. Since these legends, mermaids have appeared in stories all over the world, and often people regard them as less than fictional. Christopher Columbus swore he saw real mermaids on his voyage to the New World, but then again it's becoming abundantly clear that he had no idea what he was looking at for a lot of that journey. Some places and cultures have slightly varying versions of the mermaid, like the Selkie, which is an Irish and Scottish version of a mermaid who is half seal and half woman. Of course, this creature went on to inspire many famous stories, including the Disney smash hit, The Little Mermaid. In our number 4 spot today, we have a harpy. Harpies are a character seen in Greek and Roman stories, and in those they are described as a bird, but with the head of a woman. And at first I thought that sounds kind of nice and cute, but when we take it back to some of the earliest mentions of harpy, like by the poet Ovid, we see them described as human vultures, which sounds significantly more terrifying than what I was imagining. In fact, harpies are quite often described as horrifying, disgusting creatures, with descriptions that only get more grim as time goes on. Initially, it seems as though harpies were seen as the personification of storm winds, and throughout the legends we see that they would often steal food from their victims as they were trying to eat, and also they would be responsible for carrying those who had done evil things to the Erinyes, who were the female deities of vengeance. When a person suddenly disappeared off the earth, it is thought to have been the work of the harpies. They were the agents of punishment who were known to be cruel, vicious, and pretty violent as well. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Gorgons. It is possible that you may not be familiar with the term Gorgon, but it is very likely that you know one of them. The descriptions of the Gorgons do vary slightly, but they commonly refer to 3 sisters: Stheno, Uriel, and Medusa. These sisters were mostly human, except for the fact that their hair was made up of slithering, slimy snakes. The earliest examples of the Gorgons comes from the Greek mythology, in which the Gorgon-like creature had scales and claws, but no serpent hair. When the tales of the 3 sisters came into play, so did the stories of how they had horrifying faces that, should anyone gaze upon them, they would immediately be turned into stone. In the legends, 2 of the sisters are immortal, but the most famous of the trio, Medusa, was not. This led to her being slain by the demigod Perseus, but not so much could be said for the other 2. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Minotaur. This creature was first seen in Greek legends and later Roman, and basically it is a creature that is part bull, part man. The name of this creature comes from the bull god Minos, who was a major deity in ancient times. The Minotaur is said to have been created as Minos competed with his brothers as ruler. During this time, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the sea god, to send him a snow-white bull as a sign of the god's favor. Minos was meant to sacrifice the bull in order to honor Poseidon, but he was entranced by the bull's beauty and decided to keep him, thinking that the god would accept a different sacrifice in place of the bull. Of course, Poseidon was not pumped about this decision, so he needed to punish Minos. He did this by making Minos' wife fall in love with the bull, and one thing led to another, and there was some very unnatural offspring. In the end, the Minotaur was born, but there was no natural food source for this creature, so instead it began to devour human flesh to appease its appetite. The creature is depicted as having the head and tail of a bull with the body of a man. While the most famous appearance of the Minotaur was in the Greek story of Theseus, who actually fought the Minotaur in the labyrinth, the legend of this creature has long prevailed and is seen in many stories still today, including Dungeons and Dragons, and some would even argue that the Beast in Beauty and the Beast is a creature modeled after the Minotaur. In our number 1 spot today we have the Seder. We're not just talking about Mr. Tumnus, we're taking it all the way back to the Greek stories of the creature who is half man and half goat. These creatures started out in legends as a male nature spirit with ears and a tail resembling those of a horse, but throughout the years they became more human-like and less beast-like before they began to gain these more goat-like characteristics. It is thought that perhaps the depiction of the goat-human hybrid comes from them sort of melding with the character Pan. Either way, these creatures are often depicted as being comically hideous, and they also have quite a few lewd descriptions that I can't exactly detail here on YouTube. Let's just say it is very obvious that they're always a little excited. This fits perfectly with the fact that these creatures are often known to love things like wine, music, dancing, and definitely women. Satyrs were companions to the god Dionysus and are believed to live in places like woodlands or the mountains or even in pastures. They are very motivated by sexual desires and are even known to do some pretty horrendous things in pursuit of these desires. Although these characters are quite ridiculous in a multitude of ways, they are also thought to possess a lot of really useful knowledge, but they need to be persuaded into sharing it. How human. That's the most human-like characteristic that these guys have. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the Centaur. This is one of the most famous hybrid creatures of all time, the infamous horseman of Greek legends. It isn't quite clear exactly how this legend originated, but there is a really interesting theory which I love. Basically, some people believe that perhaps the idea for this creature came about when the people of the Minoan culture, who are said to have possibly at the time been unfamiliar with horses, they ran into a tribe of horse riders. The skill these people had in riding horses, along with how being able to traverse on horse would of course change the way that the Minoan people lived, basically just inspired them to create these tales of the horse-human hybrid creature. This seems like a very possible origin for the legend, but regardless of where it came from, the legend stuck around into Roman times, where it was then highly debated whether or not these creatures actually may exist. Clearly, however, this legend would go on to endure long past the days of ancient Rome, considering the fact that the tales of the Centaur still exist today. In our number 9 spot today we have the Achidna. The Achidna is a half-woman, half-snake creature that first became well known through Greek mythology. In the legends, she is described as being half-beautiful maiden and half-fearsome snake. In fact, Hesiod described her as an irresistible monster who is like neither mortal men nor the undying gods. Instead, she was, quote, half a nymph with glancing eyes and fair cheeks, and half again a huge snake, great and awful with speckled skin, and she, quote, dies not nor grows old all her days. Achidna is the partner to Typhon, who is a terrifying snake man, and the two are said to have created the most horrendous children. The first child was Orthrus, who was a two-headed dog who guarded the cattle of Geryon. The second child was Cerberus, who was a dog with more than two heads who guarded the gates of Hades. And finally, their third child was the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent with many heads who had the ability to regrow any if they were to get cut off. This is all to say that Achidna had quite a terrifying story to her, and it's interesting because some scholars believe that the tales of dragons in medieval Europe were actually based in part on Achidna. In our number 8 spot today we have the Mandrake. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you might be familiar with mandrakes, and they are particularly interesting because they are one of the few examples that represent a human hybrid that is a mix between human and plant. The mandrake plant is a very real group of plants in the genus Mandragora, and they are usually found in the Mediterranean. It is believed that the tails of the mandrake come from the fact that often the roots of the mandrake have such a strange appearance they sort of look like human faces. This likely would have been enough to fuel the legends, but things do not end here. The thing is that this plant has some hallucinogenic properties, so that, combined with the weird face-looking roots, and you have the perfect recipe for quite a legend. It's funny to think that this story probably started out because someone was on a bit of a trip. In the legends, when the plant is dug up from the ground, it will release a horrible scream that has the ability to kill anyone who hears it. In our number 7 spot today we have the Sphinx. The Sphinx is of course commonly associated with ancient Egypt, and it is the creature that is depicted with the head of a human, the body of a large cat, and the wings of an eagle. Like I said, this image is often associated with ancient Egypt due to the famous monument that can be visited in Giza still today, but this isn't the only place the Sphinx is seen in legends. In Greek tradition, the Sphinx plays the role of a merciless woman who will kill and eat anyone who cannot answer her riddle, as seen in the tragedy of Oedipus. When we take it over to Egypt, the Sphinx is often seen with the head of a man and was seen as a benevolent creature with incredible strength. The legends and imagery of the Sphinx have long endured the years since these ancient empires and continue today, and have even expanded into different cultures. In our number 6 spot today we have Sirens. These creatures originated from the tales of ancient Greece, and in these stories, Sirens were creatures with the head and upper body of a human woman, but with the legs and tails of a bird. These creatures were alluring and exceptionally dangerous, mostly to sailors. The siren would sing a beautiful song from the rocky shores, which were said to hide dangerous reefs below the water. Using her songs, she would lure sailors to this treacherous area, likely to meet their demise. The siren is an important character in the legend of Odysseus as he returned from Troy in the epic. In the legend, he had to tie himself to the mast of his ship in order to resist the temptations and the lure. The tales of the siren have lasted for years and were still quite prevalent when they made a reappearance in the writings of 17th century Jesuit priests, who believed that these creatures were in fact real. Today we still use the word siren and the term siren song to describe things or ideas that are exceptionally intriguing and alluring. Throughout the years, the descriptions of the siren have gone on to become a bit more mermaid-like than bird-like as they originated, which does bring me to my next point.
Next on the list are monkeys infused with human brain cells. Chinese scientists have recently achieved a pretty big milestone in the realm of neurobiology, basically infusing human brain cells into monkeys, a process that created chimeric embryos, organisms consisting of cells from both humans and monkeys. The objective here was to gain a better understanding of brain development and disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases. Scientists wanted to understand how human brain cells, once integrated into the monkey brains, behaved and interacted with the host environment. It's a fascinating experiment, but there are of course moral implications of blending human and animal cells and possible consequences too. I've said this before, but I just do not want a Planet of the Apes situation. I don't want a rogue AI situation. Virtually any science fiction situation happening in real life is a no-no. Sometimes I feel like scientists just haven't watched or read any science fiction before. And at number 4, we have another real case of a successful head transplant, this one done with a monkey. So meet Dr. Robert White. Dr. Robert White, a neurosurgeon who took inspiration from Vladimir Demikov's wild experiments and decided to push the envelope even further in the 70s. Dr. White didn't stop at two-headed dogs. He aimed for something even more audacious: monkey head transplants. So Dr. White successfully transplanted the head of one monkey onto the body of another. It's giving me some real Sid from Toy Story vibes here. But to be fair, the procedure wasn't just about curiosity. It was an attempt to understand the intricacies of spinal cord fusion and nerve connections. It's trying to explore the possibility of giving paralyzed or severely disabled people a new lease on life. But, at the same time, a monkey's head being placed onto the body of another one is just, people get a little creeped out by that. The idea of swapping heads between animals, just kind of gross. Once again, the monkeys also did not live long after the procedures. Next up, we have Sam Harris, aka the Pigman of Northfield. This is definitely the most believable of all the things on this list. The story goes that a 17-year-old boy, Sam Harris, went missing on October 30th in the hills of Northfield, Vermont in 1951. Harris had gone out to egg some houses that night, but never returned home. A search was launched, but he never turned up. But in the months that followed, sightings of Sam began being reported, only he looked different. He wore the face of a pig and would terrorize the New England locals. Farmers began finding their pigs slaughtered and horrendously maimed. Rumors began to spread about him having become this half-man, half-pig abomination, and even laying with pigs, creating an entire breed of pigmen offspring. So yeah, why wasn't this taught in school? Forget fractions. I want Pigman. 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 Alright, second place, Humanzees. The concept of a chimpanzee-human hybrid has been around for years. Although there aren't any definitive documented cases of this ever having worked, there are real-life cases of attempts being made. First in the 1920s, a Soviet scientist with too many V's in his name, Ilya Ivanov, he attempted to create a chimp human. His attempt was pretty blunt. Put some human love juice into some female chimps. Luckily, this was done artificially. Surprise, surprise, but the chimps did not get pregnant. So the logical next step was, well, if chimps can't get pregnant, just take that and reverse it. Take some ape goo and try to get some human volunteers pregnant instead. And there were volunteers, surprisingly, but the experiment never actually took place, thank God. His orangutan died, and then the government exiled him. Anyway, cut to 1981, and a Chinese scientist named Ji Yongzhang claimed to have worked on a human-chimp hybrid experiment in 1967, in which a female chimp was impregnated with human you-know-what, but apparently the chimp died before actually giving birth. Finally, though, we have Ligers. Ligers are not a thing from Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, they are, but they do actually exist in real life too. The hybrid offspring of a male lion and a female tiger are indeed real, but they're also met with a lot of health issues, mostly related to their size. Ligers grow much larger than their parent species, sometimes reaching lengths of 10 to 12 feet and weighing up to 900 pounds or more. Their immense size puts a lot of pressure on their bodies, including their organs and skeletal structure, but especially their hearts. Ligers often suffer from heart conditions, mainly due to their hearts struggling to support their massive bodies. And this disproportionate growth can also lead to other health issues, difficulty in breathing, arthritis, and just a shortened lifespan compared to their lion and tiger counterparts. Now, when it comes to the moral implications of creating ligers, primary concern revolves around the ethics of hybridization in captivity. Ligers don't occur naturally in the wild, and their creation is solely a result of human intervention, typically in captive breeding facilities, think, what was that show? The Tiger Guy? All those kinds of places. People who collect exotic animals. Breeding ligers and other hybrids like tigans, which are the offspring of a male tiger and a female lion, it's just prioritizing human curiosity and profit over the actual welfare of the animals. It's highly exploitive, mainly done as this novel thing for entertainment purposes. And we're kicking off the list with human-monkey hybrids. Spanish biochemist and developmental biologist Juan Carlos Ispidas Belmonte has been working with scientists in China to develop a new type of monkey, one whose organs are made entirely of human cells. Now, they aren't just doing this for the hell of it. The purpose is to create chimeras that can be used for organ transplants. The process involves injecting monkey embryos with human embryonic stem cells in the hopes that they'll grow together. Then you'll have these monkey creatures with human livers or kidneys, and if someone happens to need one, we can grab it from a creepy hybrid monkey. There are ethical questions involved with this, though. Is it wrong to create life that's only being used to harvest organs, or is the unethical side of monkey farming outweighed by the help that it can provide? If you are liking this channel so far and you haven't subscribed yet, yet, why not hit that subscribe button? Lots of cool videos coming your way, so don't miss out. And as always, let me know your thoughts in those comments below. At number 9, we have what I'm just gonna call mice humans, because that sounds very intriguing. What is a mouse human, you're probably asking? Well, back in 2014, scientists at the University of Rochester Medical Center pulled off something pretty wild. They managed to stick a bunch of human brain cells into lab mice. This experiment didn't just teach us more about how our brains work, it also stirred up some serious moral questions about how far we should push the boundaries of science, especially when it comes to animals. They injected these mice with human glial cells, and over time these human cells meshed with the mouse's brain, basically taking over from the mouse's original cells, and this actually resulted in the mice having an increased memory capacity. They tested this by playing a sound and then zapping the mice lightly, and the next time they played the sound, they noticed that the mice were on high alert, just remembering that shock 4 times better than their regular non-human brain mouse pals. But of course, nothing's ever simple, right? Alongside this pretty incredible discovery came some heavy ethical questions. Is it cool to tinker with animals' brains like this and, you know, electrocute them? Next up, we have two-headed dogs. Now, this isn't quite a crossbreeding case per se, but it is a super messed up scientific experiment that actually did happen. So alright, let's get into two-headed dog transplants, courtesy of Vladimir Demikov, a Soviet scientist who rocked the world of surgery back in the 50s. Demikov was the mastermind behind some truly bizarre experiments where he surgically attached the head of one dog onto another, a two-headed dog. Now, the idea behind these experiments was to explore the possibilities of organ transplantation and study the body's responses to these procedures. Demikov's work was groundbreaking in the world of surgery, really pushing the boundaries of what was medically possible at the time. But as you can imagine, this stirred up a massive ethical storm. The morality of creating these Frankenstein-like creatures just for scientific curiosity, it's just inherently cruel playing around with life in such a drastic manner. The dogs would not live long after these experiments. It's also just weird and creepy. I don't like the idea of a two-headed mangled dog thingy. I don't know. At least make it 3, then you'd have like an actual mythical creature on your hands, straight out of ancient Greek mythology. And at number 7, we have the Zonky, Zorse, Zedonk. They all sound like something out of Dr. Seuss, but they're a very real thing. They're a female or male zebra mixed with either a female or male horse or a female or male donkey. Whatever the variation though, it's highly unethical. Breeding these things might seem kind of intriguing, but it raises ethical red flags. Just like any animal hybrid, the big issue here is that these hybrids are usually sterile, rendering them unable to reproduce naturally, which raises concerns about their overall well-being. Breeding animals for novelty or profit, knowing they can't lead to substantial populations, seems a little ethically rocky. Plus, they often have health issues related to their mixed genetic makeup. There's just no purpose in breeding these animals other than the spectacle of it. Next up, we have whalfins. Made a false killer whale, which is a more aggressive species of dolphin, with a common bottlenose dolphin, and you get a whalfin. These hybrids have been known to occur in captivity in marine parks or aquariums, and that's a big part of the bad ethics behind this one. Marine parks are notoriously crappy to animals, but aside from how these animals are often treated in these places, whalfins, like many hybrid animals, often face health issues and higher mortality rate compared to their parent species. The mixing of genetic material from different species can lead to various psychological and behavioral problems, causing suffering and reducing their overall quality of life. Whalfins can't occur naturally in the wild because of the geographical and just behavioral differences between false killer whales and bottlenose dolphins. Breeding them in captivity is not part of the natural order. It's human tinkering. Plus, combining a highly intelligent dolphin with an apex predator dolphin, maybe not the best idea.
And finally, our frostbite tests. Have you ever wondered why we know so much about frostbite and how to treat it? Well, you have the horrific Unit 731 and Hisato Yoshimura to thank. Actually, please don't thank them. They do not deserve your respect. They took hundreds of people and experimented by freezing different parts solid and then trying out different techniques to thaw and heal them. Heal is a bit of a stretch, as the vast majority of test subjects simply had utterly the inhumane and horrific things done to them. Hisato Yoshimura was despised even by other members of Unit 731. These are people who are testing fire throwers and diseases on live subjects, and Hisato was so brutal even they called him a cold-blooded animal. For the rest of his life, Hisato would show zero remorse for the hundreds of lives he took, and was granted clemency by the United States in exchange for his research. Those were terrifying human experiments the government tried to hide from you. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you next time.
Now, the proper name of it, the Vincanti mouse, was a laboratory mouse from 1996 who had what looked like a human ear grown on their back. Now, the ear was actually an ear-shaped cartilage structure grown by seeding cow cartilage cells into biodegradable ear-shaped molds and then implanted under the skin of the mouse with an external ear-shaped splint to maintain the desired shape. Then the cartilage naturally grew by itself within the restricted shape and size. So no, the mouse could not hear out of that ear and listen better, but hey, it's pretty cool that they were able to do this. Now we have the robot monkey. Now, robot monkey literally sounds like the name of some sci-fi movie, but it's actually something that happened in real life. In May of 2008, experiments were conducted by Dr. Schwartz, a professor of neurobiology at the University of Pittsburgh, to teach a monkey to feed itself by using its thoughts in order to control a 4-degree of freedom robotic arm with shoulder joints, elbow, and a simple gripper. Now, they gave the monkey 2 brain implants, one each in the hand and arm areas of its motor cortex. These monitored the firing of motor neurons and sent information to a computer, which translated the patterns into commands for the robotic arm. As a result, the monkey was able to manipulate the arm, and it learned to use it to reach for food pellets, press buttons, and even twist knobs. Now, I know this sounds a little crazy, but it's actually a good thing that that was happening. By putting the brain in direct communications with machines, researchers will one day be able to engineer and operate advanced prosthetics in a natural way to help paralyzed people live a close to normal life. Now, Vladimir Demikov was a pioneer in transplantology, as he even coined the term. Now, after transplanting a number of vital organs between dogs, he wanted to take it a step further and create what we called the Multidog. Now, Vladimir removed most of the body of a small puppy and grafted the head and forelegs to the neck of an adult dog. Now, the big dog's heart pumped enough blood for both heads, and when the Multidog regained consciousness after the operation, the puppy's head woke up and yawned. Now, the big head gave it a puzzled look and tried first to shake it off, but remarkably though, both dogs kept their own personalities post-surgery. Though handicapped by having almost no body of its own, the puppy was as playful as any other puppy, and when the host dog got thirsty, the puppy got thirsty. When the laboratory grew hot, both host dog and puppy put out their tongues and panted to cool off. Now, unfortunately, the experiment wasn't a total success. After 6 days of life together, both heads in the common body died. Now, Ilya Ionovich was a Russian biologist born in 1870 who worked in artificial insemination. Ilya then wanted to get the sperm of animals and put them into different species to see what would happen. But in 1910, he told a gathering of zoologists that he thought it could be possible to create a human-ape hybrid. In 1926, he and Serge Vonarov transplanted a human ovary into a chimp before attempting to inseminate her with human sperm. Now, he attempted this 2 more times without success, so then he pitched an alternative approach to take sperm from chimpanzees and implant it into African women without their knowledge. Now, thankfully, the French governor said no to the idea, but Ilya then traveled to Abkhazia with 20 apes and was able to convince people to be a part of this experiment. 5 women or more volunteered, but no ape survived long enough at the ape nursery, and though he had women, Ilya found himself out of sperm. Now, before he could ship more apes, the Soviet Academy of Sciences heard about his plans to inseminate women in Africa, and all support for the project was taken away.
Up first are the Viphole Experiments. In the mid-30s, Sweden was struggling. Not with fascism like the rest of Europe, but with cavities. No one really knew how cavities happened, despite them being everywhere. But people had an idea that sugary foods may have been a cause. So what did the Swedish government do? They force-fed intellectually disabled patients at Viphole Hospital with hyper-sugary treats. It became clear pretty quickly that sugar was very bad for the teeth, but the results were actually restricted for years because the sugar industry no longer wanted this study, which it had funded, to be published. It turns out the government also had no idea this experiment was happening, as it had been labeled as a vitamin experiment, except the vitamins were exchanged for sugar 2 years into the study. Next is Camera. Camera, or the Cell, was the central research facility for the Soviet Union's toxin programs, and like many things within the Soviet Union, Camera combined cutting-edge science with the inhuman cruelty of a lifetime of propaganda. For 70 years, from just after the revolution to the end of the Soviet Union, this secret laboratory would take prisoners from gulags to test on, going through thousands of inmates who, obviously, had no say in their treatment. Numerous compounds were tested in the search of an untraceable, untastable, unsmellable toxin, eventually coming up with K2, which has been rumored to be the toxin of choice for the current Russian government ever since, being used allegedly on numerous Russian nationals such as Alexei Navalny. Next are the Porton Down tests. From 1916 to 1989, the full length of the Cold War, the British government experimented on 20,000 British soldiers, testing different gases, toxins, chemicals, and biological agents. As one story among tens of thousands, in 1950, RAF engineer Ronald Madison was given a 200 milligram dose of sarin, a potent nerve agent. He had been told that he was testing a cure for the common cold. He did not survive. It wasn't only British soldiers either. Thousands of Indian soldiers were also experimented on against their knowledge within India. The full consequences of this illegal human experimentation hasn't fully been revealed, as some soldiers likely had little or minor impacts, while others perished on the spot. Most soldiers likely had an experience somewhere in the middle. Next is MK Ultra. The Central Intelligence Agency is one of the most shadowy and unethical institutions in the nation and possibly the world, and MK Ultra has come to exemplify exactly why they got that reputation. MK Ultra was designed as an interrogation and brainwashing study and spent 20 years, that we know of, using every technique and method known to man to shatter people's minds and make them talk. This ranged from psychotropic substances and hypnosis to physical harm and repeated SA. In Germany, Japan, and the Philippines, they even established secret camps where they experimented on suspected spies and other expendables. The details of this program are utterly horrific, but even worse is that they don't even work. Oh, the CIA got very adept at shattering people's minds and breaking their connection with reality. It's just that people with shattered minds are completely useless for gaining information. They won't even realize that they're making things up. They're just so desperate to appease their captors that they will say anything to make the interrogation stop. This is why practically no usable information has ever been recovered this way, and actual information is gained through social engineering and rapport building. Next is Canotrovan. A lot of African nations have a pretty strong fear of doctors. Now, this isn't because of superstition or some fear of the modern. It is in fact very, very, very justified. In 1996, just as an example, Pfizer went to Nigeria during a meningitis outbreak and falsified a letter of approval for human trials. They gave 100 youths a very weak dose of the leading meningitis treatment, and another 100 used their own antibiotic, Trovan, trying to skew the numbers in their favor. 11 youths would perish in the study, and many others suffered long-lasting health effects. Pfizer knew that the antibiotic was known to cause rather severe side effects, especially in juveniles, but leapt into human experimentation as soon as possible. They took advantage of the fear of a disadvantaged population during an outbreak that took 12,000 lives, and told them either you participate in our study, which we won't fully disclose all the risks for, or you get no treatment at all. Next is the Beecher paper. In 1966, Henry Beecher, an accomplished doctor and researcher in his own right, published an analysis of 22 papers. These papers had all been widely published in widely read and respected medical journals. They were also all on incredibly unethical studies. In one study published, the subject was told they were going to be injected with some cells, while not being told these were cancer cells that they were being subjected to. The publishing of this analysis finally brought to the public's attention, for the first time really, the massive and rampant issue of unethical human experimentation. Experiments that were being published by respected researchers in world-renowned journals. The Beecher paper would lead to the establishment of the first ethics boards and committees, which seems like an obvious no-brainer now, but simply didn't exist in the 1960s.
And at number 5 we have another David story, David Huggins. Huggins is an artist, with most of his work depicting extraterrestrial beings. For him, these aren't pieces of fantastical work though. They are depictions of his first-hand and accounts with alien abductions, which he claims to have had a lot of. His odd experiences with aliens began when he was just 8 years old, and it persisted as he grew up. Perhaps his strangest story is how he met an alien named Crescent, who according to him was actually a hybrid. And the story goes that Huggins did a lot more than Huggin with this strange entity. Yes, his first time was with a human-alien hybrid. He also claims to have had over 50 children with her, who visited him along with Crescent. They're also accompanied by several of your classic gray aliens and insectoid-type beings who are their leaders. All sounds pretty legit to me. Honestly, whether any of this is true or not, whether it's just a big hoax he's concocted for fun, or if he actually believes what he says, he seems to be living his best life, making some pretty cool art out of it as well, so I'm into it. Check some of the paintings out. They're kind of creepy, but I don't know, interesting. Next on the list we have Simon Parkes. Simon Parkes is a British politician and self-proclaimed alien abductee who has gained attention for his interesting claims about his experiences with extraterrestrial beings. He claims to have been contacted by a 9-foot-tall green alien who claimed to be his true mother when he was a baby. According to Parkes, his mother, who he refers to as the Green Lady, is a mantid extraterrestrial, a type of alien that supposedly resembles a praying mantis. Parkes claims that his encounters with extraterrestrial beings began in his childhood. He says that these experiences continued into adulthood, including interactions with the Green Lady, aka his mom. He describes his relationship with his alien mother as complex, involving telepathic communication and a sense of connection that goes beyond human understanding. Parkes has shared his experiences in interviews, radio shows, and conferences with the UFO and conspiracy theory communities, but he was also quoted saying, "For many people who don't experience it, it's very hard to accept. We are taught to only see and believe what we can touch, but it's acceptable to believe in religion. It's a personal matter and it doesn't affect my work. I'm more interested in fixing someone's leaking roof or potholes. People don't want me to talk about aliens." Number 3, Linda Moulton Howe. Linda Moulton Howe is a prominent American investigative journalist, author, and ufologist known for her research on unidentified flying objects and alleged extraterrestrial encounters. She's conducted a ton of interviews with people who claim to be alien abductees or had contact with alien beings, including human-alien hybrids. Throughout her career, Howe has explored various abduction stories where individuals have reported encounters with human-alien hybrids. She's gathered testimonies, investigated the narratives of these alleged abductees. Her interviews often include detailed descriptions of these hybrid beings, accounts of genetic experiments, encounters with advanced technologies. These accounts typically involve claims of reproductive experiments, where abductees report being subjected to procedures that imply the creation of human-alien hybrid offspring. Next on the list we have the strange case of Jeffrey Alan Lash. Jeffrey Alan Lash was a mysterious guy who gained attention in 2015 after his death in Los Angeles, California. Lash was found dead in his car, and authorities discovered a whackload of weapons, ammunition, and cash in his home. What made this case even stranger, though, was the claim made by his fiancée, Catherine Nebron, that Lash was a human-alien hybrid. According to Nebron, Lash had told her that he was a hybrid with extraterrestrial origins, part human and part alien. He claimed that he was sent to Earth on a mission and possessed special powers as a result of this hybrid nature. Nebron believed Lash's story and thought he was a secret government agent involved in covert operations. She also claimed that Lash had instructed her not to contact authorities after his death because it would jeopardize their mission. Nebron's story about Lash being a human-alien hybrid definitely got some media attention, and the case became discussed in the UFO and conspiracy theory realm. Lash's background and the sources of his wealth are also still bit murky. Finally, we have the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. In September of 1961, Betty and Barney Hill, an American couple, claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings in rural New Hampshire. According to their account, while driving late at night, they observed a bright light in the sky that seemed to follow their car. The light eventually descended, and Barney stopped the car to get a closer look. He reported seeing humanoid figures inside a craft. Panicked, the Hills fled the scene, but later realized realized they had lost a significant amount of time. Over time and through hypnosis, the couple began to recall fragments of their experience. They described being taken aboard a UFO where they were subjected to medical examinations. The beings they encountered were described as short, with gray skin, large eyes, and slits for mouths, your classic grays. Regarding the theory of hybrid experiments, some ufologists have speculated that the Hill's abduction might have involved reproductive experiments. This theory also suggests that the aliens might have conducted genetic hybridization experiments on the couple, resulting in the possible creation of human-alien hybrids. Anyway, this case became one of the first widely publicized alien abduction stories in the United States, and it's definitely one of the biggest and well-known ones. And we're starting off the list with Dolce Base. Some whistleblowers have claimed that Dolce Base, a supposed underground facility in New Mexico, is involved in genetic experiments, including the creation of human-alien hybrids. The origin of the Dolce Base conspiracy theory began back in the 80s when UFO researcher Paul Benowitz claimed he had intercepted electronic communications between alien beings and the US government. Benewitz's reports included mention of this base. One of the most prominent claims associated with Dolce Base involves the creation of human-alien hybrids. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that extraterrestrial beings collaborate with the government at Dolce Base to conduct genetic experiments, resulting in the development of hybrids that possess a combo of human and alien traits. These hybrids are often portrayed as part of a secret agenda aimed at enhancing human capabilities and serving other unknown purposes. Next up, we have the Young-Hae Chi theory. Dr. Young-Hae Chi, an instructor in Korean at Oxford's Oriental Institute, made some interesting statements a few years back. Alien abductions have been reported for years. It's always been a mystery as to why they occur. Are they experimenting on us, implanting us with unknown alien devices? Well, according to this instructor, these supposed abductions aren't malicious in nature. They have more to do with alien beings attempting to overcome climate change. In a 2012 lecture, Dr. Chi discussed how a highly advanced alien species had already made contact with the people of Earth, interbreeding with us after these abductions, attempting to form a race of hybrids to colonize the planet. He talked about how the rise in alien abductions seemed to coincide with major problems arising on Earth, like the invention of nuclear weapons and the increasing changes in climate, and that the aliens' belief is that a more intelligent hybrid species would fare better at protecting the planet. He went on to talk about it being a human's job to not only protect the planet for our own good, but to prove the aliens wrong in their assumption of superiority. At our number 8 spot, we have the friendship case. The friendship case refers to a series of alleged contact experiences between humans and extraterrestrial beings that occurred in Italy between the 1950s and 60s. The encounters were reported by a group of individuals who had been contacted by a highly advanced alien species who claimed to have established peaceful and cooperative relationships with them. The story goes that a number of face-to-face meetings and telepathic communications happened between the contactees and the aliens. These encounters reportedly took place in rural areas away from the public eye, and the humans were shown alien bases on Earth, as well as other highly advanced scientific and spiritual knowledge being shared with them. According to the contactees, these alien beings were all about the importance of peace and unity and ecological balance. The friendship case gained attention in the UFO community because of the detailed accounts and the consistency of these accounts amongst multiple witnesses. Some folks have speculated that during these peaceful interactions, some of these folks may have gotten a little handsy with their new space friends, resulting in some alien-human hybrids. Number 7, the Antonio Villas-Boas abduction. In 1957, a Brazilian farmer by the name of Antonio Villas-Boas reported one of the strangest alien abduction stories in UFO history. He claimed that on the night of October 15th, he was working in his family's fields when he saw this bright red star-like object in the sky. This object, according to Villas-Boas, descended and eventually landed, revealing itself to be a strange egg-shaped craft. From the craft emerged humanoid creatures wearing gray overalls and helmets. These beings abducted him, taking him aboard their craft. He described the aliens as around 5 feet tall, with small blue eyes and white hair. He claimed that they took samples of his blood, conducted medical examinations, and then led him into a room where he was introduced to a naked humanoid female. Oh boy. By the sounds of his description, they sound like attractive aliens too. Round, small, beady eyes, white hair. I mean, come on. According to Antonio, though, this one actually was pretty attractive, and apparently they proceeded to have a bizarre encounter. Afterwards, he was released, and the craft ascended back into the sky, leaving him alone and confused in the field. They didn't even buy him a drink. He later reported the incident to his family, who would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that awkward conversation. I would not tell my family about that. That is something I would maybe tell a couple friends about, but not my mom and dad. Eventually the story reached the Brazilian military and local authorities, and his account drew a lot of attention from the media and UFO researchers. There are some terrifying alien abduction stories. Take Travis Walton's, for example, who was experimented on his crazy ways. Gotta say though, as creepy as this would have been, not the worst thing that could happen. At least, I don't know, at least for me, alright? I don't know. It's not every day you get to, anyway. Let's move on. Next on the list we have the Dr. David M. Jacobs theory. Jacobs taught history at Temple University. He also spent 35 years interviewing people who claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. First, he was a complete skeptic, but the more people he interviewed, the more he started to notice just how similar these accounts were. Despite coming from people who had seemingly no contact with one another, what he came to believe is that according to him, these abductions are being carried out by extraterrestrials in order to create human-alien hybrids, in order to colonize the planet, and that they're amongst us as we speak. Now, this is pretty outlandish. I haven't talked to as many people as this guy has about their first-hand alien abduction stories, though, so who really knows? But from where I stand, this is pretty hard to believe. What do you all think, though? Let us know in the comments. This one is pretty gross. In 2009, researchers in Russia and Belarus created genetically modified goats that could produce milk similar to human breast milk. It wasn't exactly the same, but it apparently contained about 60% of the proteins found in human milk. Then, not long after, a team in China took things to a different level and created 300 cows that could also produce this human-like milk. The idea was to mass produce it and then sell it in grocery stores, hoping people would decide to buy milk that came from genetically modified farm animals. The Chinese team even aimed to have it on shelves by 2014. It's been over a decade now, and that milk is thankfully not available. The whole thing was just a little too weird for people, and the project got delayed and I guess stopped. The Goat Man. This is a creepy creature that's become a huge part of Maryland's local lore. It's said to be a half-man, half-goat being that roams the woods. The legend says it's the result of a failed science experiment, with some stories dating back to the late 30s, but it really took off in the 70s. Locals began reporting strange disappearances of dogs, some blaming them on the Goat Man. Of course, others thought the dogs just got hit by passing trains or eaten by other animals, but that did not stop the rumors. People describe the Goat Man, it's pretty obvious, right? It's a human face but covered in hair with horns. Some say it just has goat legs but with a more human-like body. It's said to live in shelters deep in the woods and attack anything it comes across, including, of course, people. A popular story is that the Goat Man was at one time a scientist named Dr. Stephen Fletcher, who worked at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. Legend has it that a messed up goat experiment turned him into the creature. The story really spread in 1971, after a dog's death was blamed on the Goat Man, and it became a horror story that young people would tell each other while hanging out at lovers' lanes. Next up we have Viphole. Now this also kind of sounds like a cryptid, but it isn't. This is 100% real. Viphole are this disturbing product of crossbreeding buffalo and domestic cattle, created by humans to improve beef production. To make them, breeders usually pair a domestic bull with a female American bison. These hybrids were designed to produce leaner, more flavorful meat, while being easier to raise than wild bison. What's unsettling is that unlike many other hybrids, Viphole can reproduce on their own, making making them even more dangerous for uncontrolled breeding. Now, typically, they're about 37.5% bison, looking mostly like cattle, but some are 50% or more bison, and those are called catalo. The more bison-like ones are often classified as exotic animals rather than livestock. Now, this whole thing, though, of tweaking with living things for profit and human consumption just doesn't sit right with me, and I'm guessing a lot of you would probably agree. I mean, what's wrong with just a standard, regular steak? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Alright, I'm bored talking about animals. Let's talk about human-alien hybrids. Everyone's heard stories about the government carrying out weird experiments at Area 51, but there's also another mysterious government facility said to exist, Dolce Base. The story goes back to the 80s, when engineer and UFO researcher Paul Bennewitz claimed that he intercepted strange communications between aliens and the United States government. Bennewitz said he found proof that the government was running an underground base, Dolce Base, where all kinds of very creative experiments were happening. The rumor was that the facility was mainly being used to create human-alien hybrids. Now, why would the US government and extraterrestrials want to do this? Well, I guess if you want to go full-on conspiracy, it's because it would make it easier for them to infiltrate society and accomplish whatever goal the two parties came up with. I'd just love to have been a fly on the wall, watch top-secret government officials and aliens broach the subject of interspecies mating. How awkward was that conversation? And who brought it up first, the aliens or the US government? Humans tampering with nature and crossbreeding animals, that's a pretty recent thing, right? Well, wrong. The kunga is one of the earliest known hybrid animals. These creatures were bred around 4,500 years ago in what is now Syria, by crossbreeding a donkey with a now extinct animal called a hemipi or hemip. Kungas were highly prized, extremely expensive, and likely created for military purposes. Researchers uncovered kunga skeletons at an ancient burial site in northern Syria, dating back to around 2600 BCE. They weren't horses, and they didn't match any known horse relatives either. After analyzing the DNA, scientists confirmed that these strange creatures had a donkey mom and a hemipi dad. This makes the kunga the oldest known hybrid animal bred by humans. The kunga would have been pretty strong, able to pull wagons, and the mix of traits would have made them more manageable than pure wild asses who were impossible to tame. But since the hemipi went extinct in 1929, these creatures can't be made ever again. Few have heard the eerie tale of Cannock Chase, a place that's haunted the fine people of Staffordshire, England, for nearly a century. Cannock Chase, or the Chase, as locals sometimes refer to it as, is known for a lot, aside from the scenic nature. UFOs, lights in the sky, werewolves, giant snakes, a Bigfoot-type creature, mysterious black cats, but then you have the Pie Green Tower, which sits in the middle of the forest, and it's here that people have reported spotting government officials sneaking about. The tower was built during the Cold War as a backup communication system, but some say there's more than just electronics hidden inside. One of the creepiest legends surrounding the tower is the story of the Pig Man. It's said that shortly after World War II, British and American scientists teamed up for some very twisted experiments. They allegedly kidnapped a woman, hypnotized her, and then implanted her with a human-pig hybrid embryo. The woman carried the pregnancy for months, and eventually the scientists just assumed the experiment had failed. But a year later, they were shocked to discover she'd given birth to something human in body, but with the face and snout of a pig. The creature was terrified, and before scientists could get their hands on it, it leapt out of its mother's arms and fled into the woods. Ever since, there have been sightings of a tall figure with the head of a pig roaming the forest. Next, let's talk about humanzees, the attempt to create a chimpanzee-human hybrid. Now, stories of scientists trying to do this have been floating around for years in different parts of the world, and some of these stories actually are true, although they never actually worked. In the 1920s, a Soviet scientist named Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov tried to make a human-chimp hybrid. His plan was to inject human seed into female chimps. That failed, so his next move was pretty logical: try it the other way around. Take some ape DNA and try to impregnate human women. Now, thankfully, that never happened. His orangutan died, and he was just exiled by the government. There are other rumors of ape-human hybrids though. One of the most famous goes that in World War II, the Third Reich tried to create guerrilla human soldiers. There's no way of knowing if this was ever actually attempted, but the dictator of Germany was kinda out of his mind, and was known to be into some pretty weird stuff, so I just really wouldn't put it past him. Well, here's a cryptid I've never heard of until today, the X-monkey. So the story goes that this ape creature was created in a lab in Kenya by an unknown scientist. But there is one rather famous name that's thrown around, Albert Einstein. I know nothing of Einstein ever setting foot in Kenya, but enlighten me in the comments if you have any information on this. Apparently the only reason he's sometimes brought up as a possible suspect is because he supposedly got really nervous whenever the subject came up. Because if there's anything we know about Einstein, it's that people were just constantly grilling him on an escaped robotic monkey stalking the jungles of Kenya. Oh yeah, spoilers, the X-monkey is partially robotic. Well, according to the legend, the X-monkey is about the size of an orangutan, and half of its face is robotic, including one glowing red eye, kinda like Kano from Mortal Kombat. Supposedly, some explorers in Kenya came across this abandoned lab where they found blueprints and a broken tank with hair inside. The hair had orangutan DNA mixed with artificial DNA. So it should really be called the X-ape, not the X-monkey, but hey, I don't name them. The blueprints matched exactly what locals would describe, and the name on the blueprint was just X. People say the X-monkey is dangerously smart and always faces sideways when stalking its prey in order to hide its partially metal face. Next, we have a real-life case of a successful head transplant using monkeys. This one is from the 70s, courtesy of neurosurgeon Dr. Robert White. Inspired by controversial scientists like Vladimir Demikov, Dr. White decided to take things to another level and transplant the head of one monkey onto the body of another. So, alright, it wasn't exactly crossbreeding, but it was still incredibly cruel and disturbing. To be fair, the goal behind the procedure was to understand spinal cord fusion and nerve connections. Dr. White was hoping to use this research to help paralyzed or severely disabled people gain new functional bodies. But here's the thing, no matter how noble the intention might have been, the idea of swapping heads between animals is just off-putting. The poor monkeys didn't survive for long after the surgeries. The head would stay alive, but the body couldn't function properly, and the monkeys eventually would just die because of complications. Did you know that killer bees, or Africanized honeybees, were actually created by accident? They're actually hybrid mistakes. Killer bees were created back in 1957 when a beekeeper in Brazil released 26 Tanzanian queen bees into a farm owned by biologist Warwick E. Kerr. Kerr was trying to crossbreed European bees with southern African bees to make a hardier bee that could produce more honey and thrive in tropical climates. But instead, he created a much more aggressive breed. These bees started to multiply and spread too, making their way from South America all the way into North America. They're not called killer bees for no reason. These bees are incredibly defensive and swarm in huge numbers. If they feel threatened, they'll attack anything and everything in their path. People have died from these attacks, about 2 each year in the United States alone. In the dense forests of Mexico, especially around the Yucatan Peninsula, there are tiny creatures known as chanaks. These little guys are mischievous, kind of elf-like beings, barely a few feet tall, and they love nothing more than leading travelers off the beaten path. They're tricky. You can be walking through the jungle, minding your own business, and then suddenly you've lost your way. You'll think you've been walking for hours, only to realize it's been minutes. But worse than that, you'll feel like you're in a dream where nothing makes sense. Some say these little spirits are responsible for people getting lost for days in places that seem familiar, only to come out and realize they've wandered miles off course. It's said that if you're unlucky enough to encounter a chanak, you'll have trouble remembering how you got there or how to get out. While they aren't necessarily harmful, physically anyway, the pranks they pull are enough to drive anyone mad. Some will claim to hear laughter echoing from the trees when they know they're being toyed with. But here's a pro tip if you want to avoid these things, not that I've experienced myself, a pro tip from other people: leave a small offering like tobacco or food to keep them happy. Otherwise, be prepared to wander forever in in their little pocket of the jungle. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, there's a creature that hunters and locals fear more than jaguars or anacondas, the mapinguari. If you see it up close, you probably won't live long enough to tell the story. Descriptions of the creature vary, but most agree it's this hulking beast standing up to 10 feet tall with thick, matted fur and a single glowing red eye in the middle of its forehead. That sounds bad enough already, but it gets worse. The creature is also said to have a second mouth right in the middle of its stomach. Witnesses say it lets out a horrific guttural scream. If you're unlucky enough to get close, the smell alone could knock you out. It reeks of death and rotting meat. Some believe the mapinguari was once a shaman who defied nature and was cursed to wander the jungle forever. Others think it's a prehistoric beast that never went extinct, a leftover from a time when humans weren't at the top of the food chain. Either way though, hunters avoid areas where strange, deep footprints are found, and travelers who ignore the warnings sometimes just don't come back. Hiding in the subtropical forests in the remote Garo hills of northeast India is the Mandre barung, said to be a terrifying half-human, half-ape hybrid that's been stalking the jungles for centuries, if not more. It stands at around 6 feet tall, with long arms that drag almost to the ground, and its face looks like a cross between a human and an ape. They're said to be clever. Locals say that the Mandre barung aren't just beasts, they know how to set traps and ambush humans in the jungle. When you're alone and vulnerable, that's when they strike. People who've encountered them say they've been stalked by these creatures for days, hearing heavy footsteps but never seeing their stalker. Some even claim to have had close encounters. One tourist said he looked up to find one watching him from a tree, its glowing eyes staring down with what almost seemed like curiosity. And that's the real horror. You're not just dealing with an animal, but something that's aware of you, studying you like a predator. In the jungles of Mexico, there's said to be a creature called the Tzitzimime. They are these skeletal, zombie-looking creatures with elongated limbs. They're often described as having pale skin, long hair, and glowing red eyes. These things are full-on death spirits. The Tzitzimime are believed to be manifestations of death and chaos, and they only appear during solar eclipses. And during these times, the creatures supposedly descend from the sky, emerging from the jungles and hunting down anyone unlucky enough to be caught in their path. Legends say they're relentless, stalking their victims in the jungle with terrifying speed, but what's even worse is that they don't just kill you, they're said to bring disastrous events like floods, storms, and other natural disasters following them wherever they go. Now this last one is going to sound pretty generic at first, but it's actually pretty terrifying. If you're at all creeped out by the idea of Bigfoot, well, Bigfoot's got nothing compared to the Gugwe, a creature said to stalk the deep forests of Canada and the Pacific Northwest. It's hairy, stands over 8 feet tall, and has a vaguely humanish face, but the big difference is it's got a canine snout, almost making it look like a werewolf or baboon type creature, but like an ape werewolf. And it's just as aggressive as it looks. People who've seen it don't usually get a good feeling. This cryptid doesn't hide or run off when it's spotted. It gets hostile. It growls, which you'd probably expect, but it also is said to do something really creepy. Mimic human voices, luring people deep into the woods. Native American tribes are terrified of the Gugwe, and reports of it go all the way back to the early 1900s. Probably longer, but in terms of written records, that's when. In 1995, a guy was taking photos at 7 shoots in Quebec, and when he looked back at the pictures, he noticed something strange in one shot. This. Now the image is blurry, sure, but I would not want to be anywhere near whatever that thing is, because that kinda looks like a Gugwe to me.